I experienced a consistent and sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion in my role as the Attorney General of Canada.
All right, so Jody Wilson-Raybould, the former Attorney General and Justice Minister, gave just the most incredible testimony today about her involvement in the snc-lavalin case and how she felt pressure from the Prime Minister's office to act a certain way. So I have 4 clips on this. Now, if you don't know the backstory to this, I have a full video on it I did a few weeks ago. I'll link to that above if you need a primer on what is going on here. But essentially, it's everything that I assumed was happening in that video did happen. So let me play the first clip here where she details exactly what happened.
Of approximately 4 months between September and December of 2018, I experienced a consistent and sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion in my role as the Attorney General of Canada in an inappropriate effort to secure a deferred prosecution agreement with snc-lavalin. These events involved 11 people, excluding myself and my political staff, from the Prime Minister's office, the Privy Council office, and the office of the Minister of Finance. This included in-person conversations, telephone calls, emails, and text messages. There were approximately 10 phone calls and 10 meetings specifically about SNC, and I and/or my staff were a part of these meetings. Within these conversations, there were expressed statements regarding the necessity of interference in the snc-lavalin matter, the potential of consequences, and veiled threats if a DPA was not made available to SNC.
All right, so in this clip here, she lays it all out. It's everything that I said happened, or everything I assumed happened, it indeed happened. And look, I didn't just say it, a lot of people said it. It was obvious, I thought, from the beginning that Jody Wilson-Raybould felt sustained pressure from the Prime Minister's office to not pursue criminal charges against snc-lavalin and instead move towards a DPA, meaning a deferred prosecution agreement, which would essentially allow snc-lavalin to get off with a slap on the wrist. Now, she did not want to pursue that. She did want to continue to allow the pursuit of fraud and corruption charges to go through, but she felt sustained pressure to let snc-lavalin off. And she ultimately was shuffled around in the cabinet because of it, and she lost her position as the Justice Minister. Now, let me play the next clip here where it gives you an example of Jody Wilson-Raybould's interaction with Justin Trudeau.
This same day, September 17th, I have my one-on-one meeting with the Prime Minister that I requested a couple of weeks ago. When I walked in, the clerk of the Privy Council was in attendance as well. While the meeting was not about the issue of SNC and DPAs, the Prime Minister raised the issue immediately. The Prime Minister asked me to help out, to find a solution here for SNC, citing that if there is no DPA, there would be many jobs lost and that SNC would move from Montreal. In response, I explained to him the law and what I have the ability to do and not do under the Director of Public Prosecutions Act around issuing directives or assuming conduct of prosecutions. I told him that I had done my due diligence and had made up my mind on SNC and that I was not going to interfere with the decision of the Director.
All right, so keep in mind here, Jody Wilson-Raybould is a Liberal MP, just like Justin Trudeau. And here she is giving testimony about how the Prime Minister's office, how Justin Trudeau even himself pressured Jody Wilson-Raybould to act a certain way to push for a deferred prosecution agreement on the snc-lavalin case. Now, look, my real issue with this isn't even necessarily that it's that Trudeau was trying to, involve himself in this case. My real issue is the issue with many governments around the world, and that's the power of corporations. You have snc-lavalin, a multinational corporation that would have gotten away with serious criminal charges because of their ability to put pressure on whatever government they are functioning in. So snc-lavalin is based in Quebec, and they employ a lot of people. So because of that, they hold that over. They're able to hold that over, in this case, the Liberal government, and say, oh, no, you should give us a deferred prosecution agreement because you're going to lose all these jobs if you don't allow us, if we are charged criminally and then we can't get a government contract for the next 10 years. That's going to affect real Canadian jobs. Here's the reality. Those jobs would just go somewhere else to a different company. So yeah, sure, snc-lavalin wouldn't get them, but somebody would still get those jobs. It wouldn't hurt Canadian jobs. It would hurt snc-lavalin. But because this multinational corporation has so much power, this is the kind of pressure they are able to put on our government, and in turn have the Prime Minister's office put that pressure on Jody Wilson-Raybould, the Justice Minister. So we are seeing how the sausage is made. This is how our system works. Corporations have more of a say in our government, in how things are run, than the average person does. And it's all because they have the money and they have the power. Now, let's go to clip 3, where Jody Wilson discusses the result of her not listening to Trudeau in this case.
I received a call from the Prime Minister and was informed I was being shuffled out of my role as Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. I will not go into details of this call or subsequent communications about the shuffle, but I will say that I stated I believe the reason was because of the SNC matter.
So again, I mean, I went through this in my initial video on this story, but when Jody Wilson-Raybould was shuffled around to a different position in the cabinet, she released a letter discussing how important it is for the Justice Minister to stay independent. And at the time, it was weird. People were thinking, why is she releasing this letter? But it was obvious. For people paying attention, it was obvious why she was releasing it. It was her way to try and say, look, I did what I could on this snc-lavalin case without actually calling it out. I did what I could as Justice Minister, and it's important that anybody in this role stays independent, stays free from pressure, from any political pressure at all. It's obvious why she released, and I mean, now it's really obvious why she released that letter at the time. Now, let me go to clip 4 here, where NDP MP Murray Rankin sort of sums up the importance of all this.
That I am very shaken by what I've heard here today. I've been a lawyer for over 40 years. I've taught a generation of law students about the rule of law. And what I've heard today should make all Canadians extremely upset. Now, Ms. Wilson-Raybould, we're both from British Columbia. We've known each other for many years, and I need you to know that I believe you entirely. I need you to know that. And I want you to know as well that I very much admire your courage in being here and telling Canadians what you have experienced. Because I believe, if we believe you, which I do, that there is no other conclusion that one can reasonably draw, but that there was a sustained, consistent effort to interfere politically with the critical role that an attorney general must play in our legal system. You have said, to quote back what you said, I experienced a consistent and sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion in my role as the Attorney General of Canada in an inappropriate effort to secure a deferred prosecution agreement. You talked of 10 phone calls, 10 meetings specifically about that. And then you talked about what I would call the consequences and threats if you didn't knuckle under. You said the potential for consequences and veiled threat if a deferred prosecution was not available to the SNC were brought to your attention during those conversations. So my question is this: how can Canadians, if they believe you, as I do, draw any other conclusion but that there was an attempt to politically interfere with your role as our independent Attorney General?
There you go. Now, I said earlier how I'm not as bothered by the political interference. Look, of course, I'm bothered by the political interference of this, but the reason why the aspect of, you know, the massive corporation putting the pressure on the government bothers me most here is because this political interference would not exist if it weren't for these massive corporations putting the pressure on the government and in turn the justice minister. So I can't think of any other possible case where there would be this any political interference to this extent, this amount of sustained pressure on the AG if it wasn't for a massive corporation pushing for it. What other situation would this exist in? This is the problem with these massive multinational corporations. They think because they're so big and they employ so many people that they can break the rules, they can break the law and get away with it, that they think it's their right. They think that they should be allowed to break the law and get away with it because, oh, I employ Canadians. Anybody else could have those jobs under any other smaller company. They don't need to be employed by you. So this is what bothers me so much about these massive corporations putting pressure on our government so that they get overlooked, so that they anything they do wrong, they can get away with. Meanwhile, the rest of us have to play by the actual rules. Now, I mean, huge hats off here to Jody Wilson-Raybould for being so principled here. I mean, look, I'm not a Liberal voter, but if I were to vote for a Liberal, Jody Wilson-Raybould would be the one Liberal I would vote for. This is somebody that has actual morals, principles, understands the importance of staying independent in the role that she was in. If the Liberal Party wants to save themselves, the best thing they could possibly do is have Jody Wilson-Raybould become their new leader. Because anybody else now, how can you possibly trust anybody in that party that doesn't come to her defense and instead comes to Trudeau's defense? How can you possibly trust them? It's so clear what went on here. And for her to be principled in that position, even though she was under that sustained pressure, shows you how strong of a politician and just how strong of a person Jody Wilson-Raybould is. Now, it's coming out now that there's some reaction from Justin Trudeau here. I may do a separate video on this, but I want to share this tweet from Derek O'Keefe saying, when asked if he'll let Jody Wilson-Raybould run as a Liberal in the next election, Trudeau says he'll review her full testimony and decide on that later. Okay, bud, as one of her constituents, let me say she could easily win re-election if she ran here with the NDP. Yeah, so this I can't go off on another rant. This bothers me to an extreme extent. The idea that you have this incredibly principled MP in Jody Wilson-Raybould, and you have to look over her testimony to decide if she can run as an MP in the Liberal Party again. This is the only MP holding your fucking party together. I mean, the absurdity. Anybody that votes, any progressive that votes for the Liberal Party this year, you are out of your goddamn mind. It is time to move on from look, we have a multi-party system here, but we're essentially living under a two-party system. It's always the Conservatives or the Liberals. Understand here, if the Conservatives were in charge, this would never have blown up because they would have gotten away with it. They would have let snc-lavalin off with the slap on the wrist. There wouldn't be any scandal because the AG would have been in on it. That's the difference with the Conservative Party. The idea that any conservative would have questioned the power of a multinational corporation is laughable. So the Conservative Party is just as bad, I would say worse than the Liberal Party. The difference with the Liberal Party is that they try to ride the line sometimes. And here you have an MP in Jody Wilson-Raybould who actually cared, but she was stuck in this party that doesn't give a shit. She was stuck in this party she's still stuck in this party that puts the best interests of multinational corporations over the best interests of what is right, or over even being independent in her role. I mean, it's just completely disgusting. And I really hope that Jody Wilson-Raybould, I mean, if she doesn't become the Liberal leader, and I don't think she will, that's just my fantasy, but Jody Wilson-Raybould should run as an NDP because she does not belong in this Liberal Party that has just completely, been decimated. This scandal is going to carry on for the next year. We have an election this fall. So I'm incredibly curious how this is all going to play out. But in the case of Jody Wilson-Raybould, this is somebody that you should be happy we had as the AG and the Justice Minister, and hope to God that she stays in politics and maybe runs in the future as an NDP.